The question is, and maybe I'm just not stating it properly, what's wrong with murder if there's no God? Why shouldn't I kill other people to get what I want if there's no God?
Because it doesn't help society.
Why do I care about society?
Because we as a group should worry about society. We should be making the betterment of ourselves.
But Kyle, you're importing a moral law into a frame that has no moral law. I can know what a book says and deny there's an author, which is true. But there would be no book to read unless there was an author. The same is true when it comes to morality. You can know what the right thing to do is and deny there's a God. But there would be no right thing to do unless there was a God. Does that make sense?
I guess I can see your point, yes.
I've done some videos like this, but this one is a little bit different in that the questioner in this Q&A line who's talking to Frank Turek actually allows himself to think through the ideas and allows himself to question the assumptions that he came into the question with. It's a very, very cool thing to see. And the direction that this conversation takes also has a little bit of an unexpected plot twist, if you will, that I think is also very cool. So I'll leave a little bit of commentary. I'll try to let the clip mostly play out, and then I'll give you guys some of my thoughts as well on the back end. So that being said, let's dive in.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
I'm an atheist.
Hey, thanks for coming.
Of course. I love hearing these kind of debates and stuff. You asked why would you be an atheist if you possibly might know if God exists? My answer to that question is simple. It's just the fact that there's so many terrible things in the Bible. Like at one point, Jesus says to one of his disciples, "It's great that they're torturing their slaves here, but only lightly. Even though they did nothing wrong, it's great that they're doing it." He doesn't give any reason to why he says that he doesn't do anything. I don't understand why you would want to follow such a God. And my question to you is why you would follow such a God.
Okay, let's not even look at the context of that passage. Let's just assume what you said is 100% true. Okay? As an atheist, why is that wrong?
Why is that wrong?
Yeah.
Morally, I would think that each and every human being here is the same. We all have the same rights. We all have the same wants and needs. I think we all should do the same. I think that we should, especially the God that we should follow, should have higher expectations of knowing such a God.
Okay, but you seem to be assuming that certain things are really right and people have certain rights, even if there is no God. How do you justify that? What's your standard of rightness? If there's
My
no God?
standard of rightness would be a fair society.
What do you mean by fair?
Fair? Everything is equal. I have nothing wrong. I find nothing wrong with a communistic state. That's just my opinion. I don't think it's something to be afraid of. Everybody seems to be afraid of it.
Okay.
In the United States at least. But that's just my thought of fairness, is the idea that all humans should be the same.
Okay, so it's your thought of fairness. What if Hitler has a different idea of fairness? Is he wrong?
He's not wrong.
Hitler's not wrong.
He is not, well, in a kind of idea that we all have our own opinions. I feel like we should take the utilitarian view and go with what is best for the most amount of us.
Okay, but what do you mean by best?
What would mean the greatest positives for the most amount of people?
Okay, but you're assuming that you're assuming there's a best out there. You're assuming a moral law. Where does that moral law come from if there's no God?
Moral law. I personally just think that human beings should be able to make up their own laws. I mean, each people in time have found their own moral laws, and I think that they become better and better over time.
Better, but you wouldn't even know what better was unless you knew what best was. So I'm asking you, what is your standard of best to say that certain people are closer to the best or better than others? What's the standard? Is it just your opinion, or is there something beyond your opinion which says this is good?
Well, I mean, we've all heard about utopias and a perfect society and things like that. That would be great in a way, but also we've all seen like the books like Huxley's, I believe, I forget what it's called, but he makes a book on this
Great
perfect
New World.
society. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
It's that perfect society that everybody's perfect. There's no murder, there's no any of that.
Okay, but the question is, and maybe I'm just not stating it properly, what's wrong with murder if there's no God? Why shouldn't I kill other people to get what I want if there's no God?
Because it doesn't help society.
Why do I care about society?
Because we as a group should worry about society. We should be making the betterment of ourselves.
But Kyle, you're importing a moral law into a frame that has no moral law. As an atheist, you're trying to say there is no God, which means there is no standard of rightness out there. But I'm saying this is my personal standard of rightness, which would mean somebody else could come along like Hitler or Stalin and say, Kyle, if there's no standard beyond neither you or me, then I can do whatever I want, including killing you to get what you have.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point.
That is such a beautifully pregnant pause that you see right there as he actually comprehends what Frank Turek has said. In this moment, you can see him actually processing that basically his entire life he has essentially been standing on the shoulders of giants and pretending that he can fly ideologically as it relates to morality. That being said, let's keep going.
I can see where you're coming from. I don't think that God is needed in a sense I'm not looking for perfection. I don't think anybody here is. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for human beings just to simply work together to better society. I don't really see that need for a perfect identity up above. I don't.
Okay, I mean, I'm not saying that an atheist can't be a good person. I'm not saying atheists don't know right from wrong. That's not my point. My point is that it seems to me it's difficult to justify what rightness is if everything is reduced to human opinion. Which human gets to decide, right? It's subjective then, as Levi was saying before, it's just in my subjective mind. If there's not an external reference to say that this is good and this is evil, then we're all just here and we're fending for ourselves. Now, a lot of people will say, and I appreciate your question, it's a very good question. A lot of people will say, well, we need to cooperate to get along, right? Actually, that's not true. Take somebody like Stalin. He cooperated with very few people, just his henchmen, and he killed 20 million people to get what he wanted. And then he died on his deathbed at the age of 74, shaking his fist at God one last time. He never paid for his sins on this life. Okay? So the problem, it seems to me, is we know, and you know right, and you know what's right and wrong, and I know it too, and I don't need to believe in God to know that. I just need there to be a God to justify it. Let me put it this way. A lot of atheists say, look, I know right from wrong, and I agree with you know right from wrong. But that's like saying, I can know what a book says and deny there's an author, which is true. But there would be no book to read unless there was an author. The same is true when it comes to morality. You can know what the right thing to do is and deny there's a God. But there would be no right thing to do unless there was a God. Does that make sense?
I guess I can see your point, yes.
This guy is such a legend. I love the humility that he shows in this moment where he admits that the logic that he has just been shown by Frank Turek actually does hold up. It actually does make sense. And rather than feeling like he has to just rebut that or has to sort of clap back, if you will, he just listens and actually recognizes that perhaps there is something beneath the assumptions that he has been operating by. There must be a guiding principle beneath those assumptions to actually justify human dignity, to justify human rights. Otherwise, we're in a scenario exactly like he described, which is called moral utilitarianism. It really does boil down to then might makes right, where if the majority can agree on something, then by definition that becomes what is best for the society. The problem with that, and it's interesting that he brought up communism as well, because the problem with this is that you have more death in the 20th century than all other centuries combined through the atheistic regimes that took center stage in human history. I mean, that's a really significant point, that you actually see once God was sort of dethroned from a certain position in society, it created a space where you could have, atheistic, communistic dictatorships that took over, and through that, just a horrific, tremendous amount of death and atrocity. The fact that we can agree on that raises the deeper question, which is, why can we all agree on that? Why is there such a commonly understood, a common sense approach to morality where we basically know what is right and what is wrong? But how is this possible? How do we have this moral law embedded into our consciousness? And that raises the bigger question: where did it come from? How do we know? How are we able to determine right from wrong in this way? So it's very interesting. But I really like this young guy, and I like the humility that I see. This actual video is about 8 years old, and so I don't know where he's at now. I just pray that the seeds that were planted this day have been watered and that he would come home to God. In Jesus' name, amen.